For the commemoration of 104th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide, large crowds of Armenian and non-Armenian demonstrators this year again gathered at the heart of New York City in Times Square to raise their voice and demand justice for 1.5 million Armenian souls massacred by Ottoman Turkey during the Armenian Genocide in 1915. A century later, following the horrific massacres of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, the issue of recognition of Armenian genocide remains front and center for all Armenians across the globe and the rest of civilized world. For nearly 3 decades, Armenian Genocide commemoration event at Times Square has been organized by Mid-Atlantic chapters of the Knights and Daughters of Vartan. The 104th anniversary co-sponsors, including the Armenian General Benevolent Union, the Armenian Assembly of America, the Armenian National Committee of America, the ADL Ramkavars, and the Armenian Council of America. Participating organizations included the Diocese and Prelacy of the Armenian Church of America Eastern, Armenian Missionary Association of America, Armenian Presbyterian Church, the Armenian Evangelical Church, the Armenian Catholic Eparchy, and the numerous Armenian youth organizations. As in previous years, among the participants were staunch supporters of Armenian issues, U.S. representatives of Congress and Senate, Armenian clergy, community leaders, and all major Armenian political, charitable, and cultural organizations. Armen Macomber Esquire and Professor Navaid Beylerian compellingly led the program. The event opened with Astekner Junior Ensemble of St. Gregory Illuminator Mission Parish in Brooklyn, which sang the Armenian and American anthems under the leadership of Maria Sahakian. His Eminence Archbishop Anushavan Danelian, prelate of the Armenian Prelacy, read the invocation and offered the opening remarks.
For 104 years, we have lived with the memory of the genocide, and the wounds became deeper because the perpetrator denied and still continues to deny the dastardly deed. Thus, the denial of genocide for 104 years became a continuing genocide for the Armenian nation.
Zaven Khanjan, Executive Director and CEO at the Armenian Missionary Association of America, addressed the audience.
We are here today by the grace of God, who through the goodwill of good Samaritans saved tens of thousands of orphans and widows, driven to extinction in the treacherous Syrian desert or on their way to their Golgotha in Deir Zor. Unsung heroes who sacrificed their lives to save the remnants of an indigenous people uprooted from a homeland where their forebears were graced to call home for over 4 millennia. Heroes who placed righteousness or the faith they professed above the shame of adherence to the orders of a heinous Ottoman government set to annihilate a race in a genocidal crime against humanity.
A tireless advocate for Armenians, Senior Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey called for a truth to be told about what happened to the Armenians and spoke about the new resolution in the Senate he is proposing that will have the U.S. to recognize the Armenian genocide.
Nearly 104 years ago, in the waning years of the Ottoman Empire, Turkish authorities began a systemic campaign to exterminate the Armenian population through killings, starvation, forced deportation, and untold brutality. Such intentional, horrific violence targeted towards one people has a name, and one name only, and that name is genocide, the Armenian Genocide. Every April, we come together to call the crimes committed against the Armenian people by its rightful name. Together, we not only remember the 1.5 million victims for the way in which they died, we also reflect on the way in which they lived. for their contributions to Armenian history and culture live on today, and there can be no denying them. Today we stand in the unshakable support of the truth. Now these days it seems as though the acceptance of basic truth is increasingly treated as optional. But the Armenian people know this denialism all too well. For years now, the government of Turkey has spent countless millions of dollars on lobbyists willing to trumpet lies and make excuses for the atrocities that its predecessors committed. Portraying the extermination of 1.5 million Armenians as nothing more than the consequence of World War I is a distortion of history at best, and at worst a contrived excuse for an unthinkable crime against humanity. Portraying death by genocide as no different from any other death that occurred at that time is a distortion of history and a callous reaction to human suffering. To this day, the Turkish state continues to undermine the fundamental right of free speech in Turkey and abroad. That is essential for both studying the past and informing the present. The Turkish government and its extremist sympathizers have advocated for restrictive laws on expression and against legislation that recognizes the Armenian Genocide. They've initiated prosecutions and smear campaigns against historians who study the Turks' treatment of the Armenian community. And they've even resorted to violence and harassment against journalists and activists who bravely speak the truth. Such actions are reprehensible, and they speak volumes of both about the crime and the cover-up. Fortunately, there are countless voices, many of whom are here today, who have spoken up and stymied Turkey's effort to diminish the Armenian genocide.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, lifelong supporter of the Armenian cause, made a forceful demand for both US and Turkey to call the events of 1915 by its rightful name, genocide.
I love the Armenian people. They are such a good, fine, wonderful people. And maybe you always work hard, don't ask for much for yourselves, and you have real compassion for others. And I think that may be because of the Metzger, that you know what it's like to suffer and you have sympathy for others who are in that position. But I salute the Armenian people, and the more Armenians there are in America, the better America will be. Now let me just say this. I would like to first take a moment to remember the victims of the genocide and their descendants. I just met a young woman. She's a leader in one of our New England states. I met her because she's thinking of running for the Senate. Her great-grandparents were slaughtered in the genocide, and only through a relief agency did her grandparents, who didn't know each other then, get to America. She told me the whole story about them. And these stories we hear over and over and over again. And yet, the Turks and too many of their allies have the nerve to want to make us forget and lie about the genocide that was perpetrated on the Armenian people. And I say, never will we forget. Never, never, never. We owe it, of course, to the Armenian nation, but we also owe it to all of humanity and to ourselves to call out evil when we see it. A genocide that's not properly defined and remembered will certainly lead to another. And you know, of course, what Hitler said when he was thinking, and then unfortunately succeeded far too brutally to kill the Jewish people. No one remembered the Armenian genocide. That is a lesson not just for the Jewish people, that is a lesson for the people of the world. Because remember, it could be your people next there are evil people in the world. They want to hurt innocent people for their own ideological and nasty ways. And if those people believe they can get away with it, they will do it. They will do it, as brutal as it is. And so, we have a moral obligation to always remember one of the most evil undertakings in the history of mankind, the horrible Armenian Genocide, Metz Yeghern. And we will never forget it. We also want to say that I am disappointed that so many of our leaders in the White House, Republican and Democrat, not partisan, have not stepped up to remember the genocide. They say it's politics. They say, well, we don't want to alienate Turkey. I say, when there is something as moral and as important as commemorating those who were brutally killed, 1.5 million people, there should be no politics. We should all stand together and remember the genocide and remember what the Armenian people went through.
Congressional Armenian Caucus co-chair Frank Pallone pledged that he will continue to push for recognition of the Armenian Genocide. He spoke about the work that is being done in Congress to recognize the Armenian Genocide. He also demanded recognition of Artsakh as an independent democratic republic.
Let me say this. We know that we need to have the United States Congress pass the genocide resolution, and one of the purposes of our Armenia caucus is to try to continue to make sure that happens. And I pledge to you again that we will continue to push for the recognition resolution to come forward, because we know there's been tremendous progress by so many other countries. Almost every state and so many countries have recognized the Armenian genocide in the last 10 or 20 years, but the United States has not. And because we have not, we still see those in Turkey. Most recently, President Erdogan, if you remember, denied the genocide just a few days ago, just a few weeks ago. And part of the reason for that is because here in the United States and elsewhere, we still do not recognize the genocide and demand that Turkey recognize it and pay reparations at the same time. So we will continue in our efforts in genocide recognition. In addition to that, we have to be supportive of Artsakh. We need to have a settlement in Artsakh that keeps Artsakh Armenian, whether it's joining the Republic of Armenia or as a separate state. And as you know, many times in our Congress, not our Congress, but our State Department, again over several with several presidents on a bipartisan basis, continues to deny people who want to go to Artsakh and have any communications with Artsakh. So within our caucus, we have another bill that's moving now that will demand that our State Department allow communications and allow people to go to Artsakh and ultimately recognize Artsakh as an independent democratic country as well. There are two Armenias now, and we must recognize Artsakh as well. But I just want to thank all of you, because without your help, we could not have an Armenia caucus. Without your help, we wouldn't see more and more countries around the world in almost every state recognizing the Armenian genocide. And I know that if you continue to be supportive, if we continue to have rallies like this and continue to draw attention to the importance of the U.S.-Armenia relationship, that we will see the day in the Congress when we will recognize the genocide against the Armenian people, and we will be more supportive of Armenia even than we are now. So please, please understand how important it is for you to be here today. Understand how important it is for all of you to continue to support your Armenian advocates and your Armenian organizations like the Knights and Daughters of Vartan, because without your help, we would not be able to make progress on the things that you care so much about.
New York Congresswoman Carolyn Malone, a member of a congressional caucus of Armenian issues, remarked that the U.S. should join the choruses of voices across the globe and recognize the genocide. She called for the president of Turkey, Erdogan, to stop the denialist policy and recognize the Armenian Genocide.
But we have to remember the Armenians, and we have to get official recognition in the United States Congress. I want to recognize the religious leaders here, Your Eminence, and to remember that it is the Armenian Church that is the oldest Christian church on this planet. What a legacy, what a responsibility, what an honor to join you in remembering, and to join my colleagues Senator Schumer and Menendez and Frank Pallone, who is a tireless leader in the United States Congress as the leader and the founder of the Caucus on Armenian issues. We must come to the day when Erdogan recognizes the genocide instead of denying it. Now, if one denies the genocide, it doesn't mean that they don't know the facts. Believe me, he knows the facts, but he's still denying. And we must have America join the growing chorus of voices across the globe calling on governments to recognize the genocide and the calculated elimination of an entire population. I am proud to sponsor House Resolution 296, which would recognize the systemic plan to extinguish an ancient and dignified and accomplished people. We must learn from this and other genocides so that we can prevent each tragedy from occurring ever again. We must teach ourselves and our children about the abuses of state power that allowed those who created these crimes to go unpunished. We must teach ourselves and our children about this genocide if we have any hope of preventing such tragedies from happening again. And I will not stop in fighting for recognition of the Armenian genocide by our government, as well as the Turkish government. And we are here today because we have not forgotten. And on this solemn remembrance of the Yetz-Yagan, the great crime, our message remains united and clear. The United States and Turkish governments must formally acknowledge the terrible genocide that occurred 104 years ago.
The Grand Commander of Knights of Vartan, Dr. Gary Zamanigian, and Daughters of Vartan Grand Matron, Diana Tukmanian, made remarks.
Fortunately, there have been credible scholars who have, through their meticulous research, provided undeniable proof that the intent of the Young Turks was to exterminate the Armenian people. Adding insult to injury, the civilized world turns a blind eye to the continuing crimes of the Turkish government.
The voice of our ancestors and our 1.5 million martyrs, now our saints, need to be heard. We are here to demand justice for those that are innocent and were brutally murdered.
The musical portion of the event was performed by Eli Berberian, who sang the famous Charles Aznavour song They Fell, to pay homage to the memory of the martyrs, as well as to the legendary Armenian singer who passed away last year. He also performed a song based on a poetry of the renowned Hovannes Shiraz, Insk Moranam, I Will Forget Myself, set to music by Majak Toshikyan, and Hayer Miatsek, Armenians Unite, by Gusan Haykazun.
Par la soif, la faim, le fer, le feu. Nul n'éleva la voix dans un monde euphorique, tandis que croupissait un peuple dans son sang. L'Europe découvrait le jazz et sa musique, les plaintes des trompettes couvraient les cris d'enfants. Sans que le monde bouge, devenant un instant minuscule fleur rouge, recouvert
Statements were made by co-sponsoring organizations, including Ken Hachikian from Armenian National Committee of America.
Truth in the service of justice. Justice not only for the lost, but for the living, for generations yet unborn, for aspirations yet unrealized. Justice that delivers ironclad security, that serves Armenia's long-term survival, that ensures Armenia's place at the table of nations, that protects, in a word, Armenia's future. And that justice must start with unambiguously breaking the back of Turkey's denials, Ankara's century-long obstruction of justice for the Armenian Genocide.
Dr. Vagenak Tarpinian from Armenian Democratic League, Ramkalash.
New generations have emerged and have been enduring the burden of injustice. The historian David Herbert Donald, professor of history at Harvard, raised the question of relevance of historic events to any current generation. This in mind, we ask, how pertinent is our history, and in particular the Armenian Genocide? If we are serious about security of Armenia, its economic development, improved infrastructure, health, stronger institutions, and innovative pursuits, then the relevance becomes so apparent to each and every one of us here and around the world today. By remembering and commemorating our martyrs, we are sending a very clear message, a message that we do and will remember them, unrelenting in our pursuit of recognition, accountability, and reparation by those parties responsible.
Brian Artuni from Armenian Assembly of America.
The International Association of Genocide Scholars, the preeminent authority on the subject matter, has repeatedly and unequivocally stated that what happened to the Armenian people was genocide. Now, fast forward to this April, wherein Turkey's authoritarian leader said that relocating Armenians in 1915 was reasonable. Reasonable? Let's be clear. The mass deportation of an entire race is never reasonable, not 104 years ago and not today. Reasonable? This is genocide denial at its worst. It is unacceptable and downright dangerous.
Christina Lalama from Armenian General Benevolent Union of America.
Armenians have an unshakable resilience, something that's guided us throughout our centuries-old history. And it's that very same resilience that allows us to enrich our unique culture, to strengthen our faith, and to guide Armenians to success in all walks of life. Because of that spirit, again, I say, we stand here today, together, to demand recognition of the Armenian Genocide by Turkey and by other world leaders. Because sadly, the world we live in today isn't much different from the world of 1915. Back then, the discourse was hate. Fear of the other was ever present. And world leaders denied undeniable facts as a tool to wield power. So because we find ourselves in such a world today, we as Armenians have a responsibility. We have a responsibility not only to ourselves and to our Armenian communities, but to humanity. Our responsibility today is to ensure that genocide never happens again. Not anywhere in the world, and not on our watch.
Gerard Kasabian, Esquire from Armenian Bar Association.
So I flew to the Big Apple on Thursday for our Armenian Bar Association's annual Public Servants Dinner that took place at the Yale Club in New York City. We, people who demand justice, gathered to celebrate two public servants on Thursday who uphold justice. I want to take this opportunity to once again congratulate our esteemed honorees, the Honorable Rod J. Rosenstein, an Armenian Pesa, and also the Honorable Robert H. Tembekcan for their hard work and dedication to uphold justice for the people of this great country. Let's give them a round of applause. Last Wednesday, April 24th, I stood shoulder to shoulder with our esteemed colleagues and leaders in the West Coast, where we honored and remembered our fallen compatriots of the Armenian Genocide. And today I stand shoulder to shoulder with you in the East Coast to honor our fallen. April is a month of reflection for Armenians and friends of the Armenians who were all severely and permanently affected by the mass atrocities committed as a result of the premeditated and highly organized official plan of the Ottoman Empire. Unfortunately, the genocide continues today in the form of an official denial campaign by the Republic of Turkey.
The students of the Holy Martyrs Armenian Day School of Bayside, New York, and Hovnanian Armenian Day School of New Milford, New Jersey, sang several Armenian patriotic songs. The Yerevan Dance Ensemble of St. Gregory, the Illuminated Mission Parish of Brooklyn, made a special appearance.
During the darkest days of the Ottoman Empire, there began a tragedy of what was known as the Armenian Genocide. The people of Armenia were forced into starvation and torture. The homes were burned to the ground, as women were forced, as women were raped, and as children were bought and sold. They were accused, convicted, because they believed in the Christ, because they believed in Jesus Christ. Never again would they suffer or thirst, because God would wipe away their every single tear. Unpunished and undeterred, the ones responsible for the massacre of Adana set the stage of the Armenian Genocide.
Very Reverend Father Mamikon Kelejian, presenting Very Reverend Father Daniel Findikian, Primate of the Eastern Diocese of the Armenian Church of America, read the closing prayer.
We Armenians were not the first people to suffer a cruel injustice, and we would not be the last. But our experience of the genocide does put a special burden on us as a generation born of survivors. We Armenians must be more than just observers and recorders. We must summon the courage and the will as the people of God to prevent such things from happening again.
With children singing God Bless America, the 104th commemoration of Armenian Genocide at the Times Square came to close.
God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home.
Սիրելի պարոն Գուլյան, 35 տարի է, որ այս գործը անձնվեր, սրտով, հոգով կատարում եք եւ այս ամենը բերում եք մեր ժողովրդին։ Ուզում եմ շնորհավորել եւ ձեզ եւ մեզ բոլորին, որովհետեւ ամեն տարի այս ամենը ավելի ահագնանում է, նոր սերունդներ են գալիս եւ մենք զգում ենք, որ իսկապես մենք անհաղթ ենք։ Ինչ է ձեր զգացումը այսօր։
Ասիկա մեկ հոգի կորց չէ, ասիկա բոլոր խումբին կորձն է, ես շնորհակալ եմ մեր բոլոր մյուս ընկերներուն եւ քույրերուն, որոնք մեզի հետ միասին աշխատին, այսպիսի կորձեր 50-ն ավելի անցեր, որ ամեն օր բոլոր դարին այսօրվան կպատրաստվին, այնպես որ այս բոլոր եղածը Հրանտ Գյուլյանը չէ, այս բոլոր եղածը Վարդանանց ասպետներ եւ թստերներն են եւ նաեւ մեր բոլոր ժողովրդին աջակցությունը։
Այո, պարոն Գուլյան, ճիշտ եք ասում, բայց եթե այս բոլորը, այս երիտասարդները իրենց աչքի առջև չունենային Հրանտ Գուլյանի օրինակը եւ ինչպես ասում են Հրանտ Գուլյանը ջահը վերցրած 35 տարի այս ամենը չառաջնորդեր, երևի այսքան նոր սերունդներ չգային եւ չմիանային։ Ինչ կուզեք ասել նոր սերունդներին, որոնք այսօր այստեղ են, որոնք դեռ նոր պիտի գան։
Մենք չենք կարող մոռանալ ինչ որ եղավ 104 տարի առաջ։ Մեր սերունդները, նոր սերունդը, երեխաները որ տեսակ, պետք է հասկանան, որ մեր պայքարը պետք է շարունակենք մինչև թուրքական կառավարությունը ընդունի ցեղասպանությունը եւ ես կխորին որ շատ հեռու չէ մեծամասնությամբ ջամփան քալած ենք եւ այդ օրերը մոտ են.
Over a century later from the horrific events of 1915, the will of the Armenian people was on full display as the program culminated in the dancing of Armenian youth inspired by the powerful song of Eli Berberian, who performed the popular patriotic song Get Ashen amid the background of one of the most iconic districts in the world, Times Square. However, the fight for justice is far from over. Armenians around the world will continue voicing their demands until the day when Armenian genocide is recognized and remembered by Turkey, US, and the rest of the world.